Welcome back. It's a problem that has reached epic proportions in Britain. Underage drinking. In a recent survey, half of 15-year-olds were boozing on a weekly basis.
Well, on today's Live Matters, we're looking at a new ITV documentary to be screened tonight, which gives us an incredible insight into the sometimes shocking antics of the nation's teenagers.
It also reveals the harmful and often deadly consequences boozing can bring. Jane Dougal reports now on the teenagers on the road to ruin.
But she soon gets...
Cherie began drinking at the age of just 12. By the age of 14, her mother couldn't take the aggression anymore. She tried to ask nearby pubs to stop serving Cherie, but eventually had to ask her to leave home.
It's obviously a constant worry, because even though I don't speak to her or see her, she's on my mind all the time, and I just don't want it to get any worse. If she lost her temper, she would thump the wall, thump the door, she would break things, she would smash things, she would argue with her siblings.
I'd start off on beer, then I'd have shots, and then we'd have a jug. Well, we'd have beer and shots, if you know what I mean.
Shocking, but it's not unusual. Now, 1 in 6 under-25s is alcoholic dependent. And each year, 1,000 children under the age of 15 need emergency treatment for alcohol poisoning.
I think that alcoholics are emerging, and it is evident that they are becoming younger and younger. Young people drinking excessively large amounts, unnecessarily doing untold harm to their young developing bodies is, a very real indication of initial alcoholism.
For some, binge drinking has had tragic consequences. Teenager Matthew Loveday died after drinking a bottle of ouzo on New Year's Eve.
We had a phone call from the police, the local police station, confirming that what the hospital had told us was correct and that he had died. And then the next day we went up to Milton Keynes to the hospital and had to identify his body.
Sherry is worried about her problem and has taken part in a survival course in America, specialising in treating teenagers with alcohol problems. Jane Dougal, ITV News.
And you can see that programme in full on ITV1 at 9 o'clock tonight. Now, later in this programme, you can put your questions to Sherry on the pulse. Why did she start drinking and how did she stop? Maybe your child is a binge drinker and you simply don't know what to do. Or are you a teenager with a drink problem? Do you blame the industry for encouraging our youngsters to binge? Well, do get in touch with us. Text the word pulse followed by your question or comment to 80088. That's 80088. Or you can email us at pulse@itv.com, and you can take part live on the phone too. The number to call 0870 242 1815. Leave us your name and a contact number and we'll try to ring as many of you back as we can.
They are the youngest victims of AIDS, and today the international organisation UNICEF is launching a campaign to focus on the children living and dying because of HIV. According to a new report, around the world 1,400 children under 15 die of AIDS-related illnesses every day. That's almost one a minute. 640,000 children contract HIV every year. Without treatment, half of them will die before their second birthday. Despite this, less than 5% of HIV-positive children have access to treatment. UNICEF's new campaign, Unite for Children, is all about educating young people to stop AIDS in its tracks.
Well, UNICEF say education is the only way to beat AIDS in the long term. One ambassador who's working to make that a reality is Jemima Khan, and Jemima is with us in the studio now. Jemima, I know you've only just got back from Kenya, where you've been visiting some of the victims of AIDS.
That's right.
Describe your experiences.
Well, as is always the case with these things, it's the examples, the individual cases that you see that really illustrate the scale and the hideousness of the problem. The main thing that really struck me on this last trip was the stigma associated with AIDS. The fact that a lot of children who are orphaned, who lose their parents and are often left caring for their younger siblings, are not claimed by their other relatives because it's seen as a curse and they're then left to cope alone. We were in Kenyatta National Hospital, for example, and just casually walking along on the 4th floor, and the nurse pointed out a spot where She said, one woman a week jumps off this balcony when she finds out she's HIV positive. Heard all sorts of horrific stories. Children in hospices being stoned because it was associated with the HIV virus.
Absolutely horrific. What does UNICEF want to see happen now?
As we just heard, the figures are shocking. Only 5% of children have access to the paediatric antiretroviral drugs. So they obviously want to make those drugs available to the vast majority. Stop mother-to-child transmission, which is also very, very important and actually quite easy to do. It's not a difficult thing. We've managed it in the West, so there's no reason why it's almost zero in developed countries now. So why we can't do it in developing countries, it's all down to funding.
Well, good luck with your campaign, Jemima, and thanks very much for coming in.
Indeed. Now then, still to come on today's Lunchtime News, your questions to the teenage alcoholic. Are you an underage drinker, or are you worried about your children? Your calls live in just a moment. And
Martin Luther King's inspiration, Rosa Parks, dies at the grand old age of 92. We take a look back at her life.
yeah, that's all in just a couple of minutes.